Howdy, y'all. I want to give a quick apology for not uploading in a while. School's starting up for me, so I've been super busy here, but I'm going to keep the uploads more consistent coming forward. Week 3 was wild, so let's just get into it. Saturday morning, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets upset the Clemson Tigers in Atlanta, Georgia. If you have watched Yellow Jackets over the past few years, you know this is a classic Georgia Tech win. This was gritty. This was blue collar. This was hard-nosed football by the Yellow Jackets. They took advantage of the mistakes Clemson made, capitalized them, and found themselves on top. They don't have the talent as some of these elite teams do, but I think they play harder than anybody else in the country. This is exemplified in their quarterback, Haynes King, who had 300 yards of total offense. I believe only one touchdown, but of those 300 yards, 100 were on the ground on 25 carries. Going forward, Georgia Tech has a very manageable schedule for the rest of the season, and they look to have a clear path not just to the ACC championship, but also to the college football playoff. Clemson, on the other hand, looked disappointing again. Cade Klubnik does not look like the guy we saw last season, and this supposedly poised and experienced group frequently looks unnerved and lost on the field. Now, Clemson's not dead in the water yet, as many will suggest to you, but they need to be perfect the rest of the way to make the CFP. Also that morning, the Tide roll against Wisconsin. Alabama these past 2 weeks has looked like the team we thought they would look like heading into this season. I've still got some concerns about the Tide on the O-line. They only ran for 72 yards against Wisconsin. Now, that Wisconsin front seven is talented, but still only 72 yards. Things look a little scary there for Alabama. The afternoon, the Georgia Bulldogs prevail against the Volunteers in dramatic and somewhat anticlimactic fashion, as the last play of the game was a review. Georgia looks to roughly be the same team they were about a year ago. Still look like they got a suspect defense and will require their offense to bail them out of lots of games. This game was a fireworks show that Tennessee had the chances to win. You remember the fourth quarter, they were up 38-30, I believe. Georgia fumbled the ball inside their own territory, and Tennessee didn't score. And then, of course, there was the last-second field goal, too. Just couldn't get the job done. Gunnar Stockton, a little more consistent than Joey Aguilar, whose Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde performance was almost enough to overcome the Dogs. This game's going to haunt Vols fans for a while, but I think their playoff hopes might be more alive and well than before the game. See, there were a lot of questions about Tennessee before the game, and there still are some, but with this electric Vols offense, I think a lot of doubt has been erased. Also that afternoon, Miami dismantled USF. Carson Beck looks to have the Canes offense rolling, and the defense looked improved over last year. I still think USF is the favorite amongst non-power teams, and while this loss hurts, I think it hurts the Gators even more. I'm going to touch on Arch Manning real quick, as Texas also played in the afternoon. I mean, Sark needs to do something, whether Arch is hurt or isn't. If he is hurt, then what is Sark doing playing him, especially when he doesn't need to? If Sark isn't hurt, they got 2 weeks to get something going before they head into the swamp. Now, I know Florida's 1-2, but that defense doesn't look half bad. If Arch looks poor against Sam Houston State, Sark either needs to give another quarterback the ball or switch to some sort of dominant run scheme where you run Arch 10-15 times a game. In the night games, Ole Miss took down Arkansas with backup quarterback Trinidad Chambliss. And while the Razorbacks by all means have a subpar defense, Trinidad looked outstanding. I mean, it might be early, but could we have a quarterback controversy in Oxford? Also, I know Arkansas didn't win this game, but they're going to break one or two teams' heart this year. Just watch out. Later that night, LSU handled their business against the Gators in Death Valley. This LSU team looks like the polar opposite of who they were 2 years ago. 2 years ago, they had overwhelming firepower on offense, but now the Bayou Bengals boast a stifling defense. The Tigers held Florida to under 80 yards rushing and picked off DJ Lagway 5 times and they also sacked him 3 times. On the other hand, though, the Tigers' offense leaves a lot to be desired. Garrett Nussmeier just completed over 50% of his passes, and before the final drive, LSU had less than 50 yards rushing. Now, these problems I think are fixable, and LSU's got the talent to fix it, but they'll need to find some answers before they play the Rebels. Florida, on the other hand, looks like their season is over. 1-2 with maybe the toughest schedule ever left to go. Now, I'm of the opinion that if the Gators go 9-3, they'll be in the playoff. But right now, it seems like a stretch. Along with that, Billy Napier looks like he's a dead man walking. It doesn't look like there's enough juice left in the Gators' tank to keep him away from being fired, especially if they lose to the Hurricanes. Also that night, the Aggies get a big one on the road, knocking off Notre Dame in South Bend. This game was a rock fight a year ago that turned into a track race, which the Aggies were able to walk away from thanks to their clutch plays and untimely blunders by the Irish. Notre Dame falls to 0-2, and while their playoff hopes are not dead, they need to be perfect from here on out. That shouldn't be too challenging, however, as they only have one ranked team left on their schedule, number 25 USC at home. Texas A&M was much more capable at the line of scrimmage this year compared to last year, which is somewhat surprising given their poor showing against UTSA. They held the Irish to just 136 yards on the ground and came away with 2 sacks. But the real story of this game is the explosive Aggie offense. Mario Craver leads the country in receiving yards. Casey Concepcion has been a stud for the Aggies as well. Le'Veon Moss each week looks more and more like his old self, and Marcel Reed gets a little bit better each week. I still have some major defensive questions, but this Aggie offense may be able to take the Aggies far. Finally, later in the night, Vanderbilt beat the brakes off South Carolina and Columbia. Even if Sellers didn't get hurt, I still think the Commodores win that one. Even after his stellar season last year, a lot of people forgot about Diego Pavia. I think he just let y'all know that was a mistake. The coaching carousel is getting started up early. Neither of the firings that happened were surprising. If you watched Foster's Media Days press conference, I believe, in his first year, you know 3 things. 1, UCLA is in LA. 2, so is USC. And 3, Foster just did not look ready to be a head coach, man. And that's really panned out on the field as the Bruins are now 0-3 with a very real chance of going 0-12. This is amplified by the fact that UCLA essentially traded Joey Aguilar for Nico Iamaleava, and it looks like they lost that trade. Brent Pry is not that surprising either. Virginia Tech used to be a premier program, but they have been relevant for 10 or 15 years. In all of Brent Pry's time, I can't remember one signature game he's had. But, I mean, this loss to ODU, Old Dominion, that is. I mean, that was more than just the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the nuclear bomb that vaporized the camel. If I'm UCLA, I'd look at Dan Mullen. Over in Las Vegas right now, one of the best offensive minds in the country might be able to make some noise for the Bruins. If I'm Virginia Tech, you might think this is crazy, but I'm looking at Jimbo Fisher. As an Aggie fan, that's strange to say because he really burnt A&M to the ground when he was here. If you read into all the things that were going on with the program, you'd be surprised he lasted as long as he did and he didn't get fired without cause. But that's neither here or there. In spite of that, Jimbo Fisher is still one of the best recruiters in the country, and he's also one of the best hype men in the country. If he goes to Virginia Tech, I'm sure he'll be able to recruit well and produce some winning teams for the Hokies. Also, quick to note, he's from that area. I believe he's from West Virginia, so he could stay close to home. Following the week, here's my personal top 25. I know the AP knocked South Carolina and Clemson, but I still have some faith in these programs. I also think there's still a lot to like about the Stunt Devils in spite of them losing against Mississippi State. I've still got Penn State at number 1. I think they've been the most consistent team in the country. I haven't really had a reason to knock them from the number 1 spot yet, but we'll see how good they are in a couple weeks when they play the Oregon Ducks. Now, if you've seen my ELO engine video, this part is going to make sense. For those who haven't, I created an engine to rank each program since the induction of the BCS. Here are some of the updates since that preseason videos. For starters, I need to mention I forgot to include New Mexico, so some of the rankings were slightly off, but not by that much. First, Ohio State and Georgia are now ahead of the Alabama Crimson Tide in the ratings. For the first time in 10 years, Alabama is not the number one team in the country. LSU has rejoined the 1300 club, meaning that club is now up to 8 teams. Iowa State, Ole Miss, Memphis, and Oregon have now all achieved their peak ratings, signifying their programs are at the strongest points they've been since the BCS was introduced. Tennessee hit their highest rating a week ago, then they lost to Georgia, so they are no longer at it. And Virginia Tech is currently at their lowest ELO after getting blown out at home by Old Dominion. They've crossed below 1,000 ELO, which is pretty bad for an FBS team. Some of the biggest upsets of the year when you look at ELO include Tarleton over Army, FSU over Bama, Georgia Tech over Clemson, USF over Boise State, and Southern Miss over Appalachian State. Also New Mexico over UCLA, and Western Michigan over Northwestern.